I'd like to ask Prime Minister of Barbados, Prime Minister Mottley, without any introduction, to give us the benefit of her thoughts on this morning's session so far. Prime Minister Mottley.
Thank you very much, Reggie. And first of all, let me thank you, Keith. This was something that was to happen in May of 2020, and COVID displaced it. But it is never too late to do the right thing. I want to commend and to endorse all that has been said on this platform, and to just make a few additional points. With respect to the bookends, Brave, you were absolutely correct in framing it. But the one missing thing is how we deal with it. Each of us is here trying to deal with this from a national perspective. But yet the crime is being fueled by things that are extraterritorial, whether it is the movement of guns, whether it is the influencing of values, whether it is how themselves people move. I, in an earlier life, used to report to Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago as well on the matter of security, and had responsibility for security for the 10 Cricket World Cup countries for 2 years. And out of that came the establishment of the Implementation Agency for Crime and Security, the Joint Regional Communications Center that deals with the Advanced Passenger Information System, should have been dealing years ago with the Advanced Customs Information System, but is only now getting there. And therein lies a tale, because a lot of the guns have come through legitimately through ports of entry rather than just being stolen in the middle of the night. One of the other things was the Regional Intelligence Center, which was supposed to deal with the collation and collection of intelligence. But you can only get out what you put in. And I believe, Prime Minister Rowley, we, in December 2018, took a decision that we've never really followed up on properly, which is that our policemen, our customs officers, and our immigration officers need to know one another. You can't ask people to trust people cross-border if they don't know who they are and have no sense of any kind of feeling for each other. But when you look at the social media that you just talked about here, it's coming from outside and it's being added to internally. We know it is affecting mental health. In fact, last night, I think 60 Minutes did a program showing that since 2012, the introduction of smartphones and the time on social media has shown a marked increase in mental health deterioration. And as Deacon just said, with COVID, it was the only thing that many of them could do with the restriction of movement. In addition to that, you have a situation where, for crime, a lot of the crime on the internet and a lot of the, whether it is actual cybercrime or defamatory comments, once again, are outside of the reach of the national jurisdiction. And when you add to that then the jurisprudential developments that have effectively led to people getting bailed for murder, in circumstances when I practiced law, nobody got bailed for murder. And I was practicing criminal law up until 30 years ago. Nobody, I look young, but I still have a little age on me. People did not get bailed for murder. Now, when I look at the stats, not just out of Bahamas, but in Barbados and all through the region, the people who are causing the greatest problems are charged with 2, 3, and 4 murders. Something is fundamentally wrong. So I ask myself 2 basic questions. One, how are we going to deconstruct and reconstruct to meet the reality of this jurisprudential
challenge
development that is undermining the rule of law in our countries? And we're going to have to find ways of cooperating from the level of the police to the level of the courts, but in particular forensics. If you can get people to court within 9 to 12 months, you have a good chance of a person not being given bail. Beyond 12 months, any number can start to play. So why are we all putting money separately and individually in forensic labs? 2, why are we not doing and pooling training? Because most police services in this region do not have enough forensic people to satisfy their own conditions, and we need to be able to pull it together. 3, Why are we not having proactive prosecutions rather than reactive prosecutions? 90% of the prosecutions in the region are as a result of a crime perceived to have been committed, as opposed to people systematically going after people in a structured way. Jamaica may have an advantage with Tony there. Tony, you were with me at the time when we were dealing with the whole regional security as well. But there are too many things, having agreed that security was to become the new pillar. It's the only pillar that has come in the last 20 years to the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, is security. But we have not followed through on the functional day-to-day cooperation that can make the difference there. Secondly, coming to the issue of crime prevention. And on the matter of law and order, the judges, we need to start rotating the use of judges and magistrates in the region to ensure that there is not the familiarity with counsel and other circumstances and the things that people take for granted. CARICOM arrest warrant. We talked about it 20 years ago. We haven't done it. Raymond is nodding his head because he was in his Ministers of National Security meeting with me. Bottom line is, if we have a CARICOM arrest warrant, we can bypass the length of time on extradition and all of these other things that are holding us up. And we do not have the level of deep cooperation that, as I said, we need, which the RIC was intended to bring about. With respect to Andrew's point about the guns and the US has no moral authority to speak on these issues. None. And you cannot separate violence from climate, from pandemic, from all of these things. There are development issues, and regrettably, in every instance, behavior that has come from outside of the region is crowding out our ability to spend money on development for our people. And that's why the Bridgetown Initiative, we're trying to force, you cannot finance development with 10 and 12-year money when citizens can get 25 and 30 years for a mortgage. It's nonsense. And we cannot put the systems in place to help us fight these things, from the education reform that Roosevelt called for, recognizing that our system is based on the 1940s Education Act of England, that does not see 100% of the population, but is only intended to educate the top 40% and the rest to be able to be herded in a particular direction. Can't work for us anymore. So I asked myself in the deconstruction, who is owning the struggle? Who else is owning this struggle? It can't be about governments, as Decon said. We need to be talking to the young people. We need to be talking to the artists. We need to be talking to the sportsmen. I used to manage a band, love music. But you cannot have Caribbean music denigrating women and promoting guns to the extent to which it is doing. And this has nothing to do with curtailing anybody's freedom of speech. It has to do with the mirror image, as Errol Barrow would say. What do you look into the mirror and see? And at the end of the day, if we're looking into the mirror and only seeing women as an object, then that is how people are going to treat them in our societies. We have just agreed that we will introduce parental coaching and life coaches for communities, not because we want to, but we realize that if children are raising children, they need support and guidance, and that there has to be a gold standard still. We talk about communities, the pursuit of money has trumped everything. There was a time when business people would belong to cricket clubs and they would go and mentor young men who would be there who might not have a father figure. How many business people, how many captains of industry belong to cricket clubs in communities across our countries anymore? How many take the time to spend and reach out to allow for intergenerational communication? These are the things that bother us, and I really do believe, Mr. Chairman, that we would do ourselves an injustice if at some point, yes, it's called a symposium, Keith, but we need to leave Port of Spain with decisions. And there's no reason why we can't, because you are the lead Prime Minister on security. We need the CARICOM arrest warrant. We need to have the exchange and rotation of judges, which will allow for and magistracy. We need to have an enlargement of the jurisdiction of magistrates. We need cooperation on forensics. And we need, finally, to deconstruct all the rules in our police service and reconstruct them. In Barbados' case, I've just insisted that we start it. Our service was established in 1835. Most of its rules were done in the early 20th century. You cannot fight and preserve law and order and fight crime with rules that were made for an analog environment when you're in a full digital, almost stateless environment with respect to crime. So I'll stop here and
Thank you
hope
very,
that we
thank
can
you
come
very
to
much,
some
Prime Minister Mottley, for that almost signature incisiveness with which Prime Minister Mottley has become so well known and so respected. Three things that you touched on that I'll just comment on very quickly, and it's really an opportunity to use the expression to big up a concept that I am completely committed to. I'm wearing my Caribbean Court of Justice tie right now, and I can say from my personal experience the amount of work that I know that the Caribbean Court of Justice is doing, even though they are not the appellate court for all of the Caribbean, with the local judiciary across the Caribbean to get us to that space that you speak about where we can begin to share our judiciary at the level that makes a difference. That's one point I'd just make because I think it's very important. The other is we are in Trinidad and Tobago right now looking at some very important legislation, some of which you've touched on. So I'm about to bring to Cabinet a bill that is going to eliminate preliminary inquiries and speed up the process of taking indictable offenses straight to the masters of the High Court with enlarged jurisdiction and to the judges. We've also bring in an amendment to the trial by judge alone to introduce lay assessors, to bring trials, and the statistics are phenomenal in our trial by judge alone, where we have abolished juries on the election of the accused, and we're going straight to trial. So those are examples of where the legislative initiatives can make a difference, and I entirely endorse the concept of using those seeds around the Caribbean so that we can enhance our capability.